Pacific. If you can hear some of my voice, that means you're near or inside our Great Hall. We're going to go ahead and start an educational presentation at our Blue Cavern exhibit. If you'd like to join us, please head all the way to the end of the Great Hall by the tail of the blue whale. There's still plenty of seating to be had. You guys are welcome to sit on the carpet, front and center.
Look at this.
There's also some benches standing here behind and upstairs along the balcony as well. We just want to keep this glass area nice and clear, just so that everyone has a great view of what's going on in here.
Alright, my friends, we're starting a presentation, so if you'd like to watch, go ahead and take a seat. Roll up. Thank you.
Alright friends, my name is Shayla. I'm here at the education team here at the Aquarium. Thank you all so much for joining us here on Christmas Eve and including the Aquarium Pacific in your holiday plans. I really appreciate it. Now I want to introduce you to one of our local habitats here, our Blue Cavern. And this exhibit is actually based off of a real dive site, also called Blue Cavern. But the real Blue Caverns can be much, much bigger than this. In fact, if you stack 2 or 3 more of these exhibits on top of each other, you'd get closer to the accurate size of the real Blue Cavern. Now, Blue Cavern is a kelp forest dive site. And so that's what's going to come into play with all these leafy structures you see in here. This is going to be giant kelp. Who here has seen something like this before? Probably just seaweed. If you've been to the beach here, you've probably seen giant kelp here locally. Now, just by looking at it, raise your hand if you think it's a plant. Anyone think this is a plant? No one. I love it. Raise your hand if you think it's an algae. Raise your hand if you don't know. Thank you for your honesty. I appreciate it. Now, this is, in fact, a type of algae. So the 2 of you that raised your hand when I said that, good job. We love it. This is a type of brown algae, the largest species of brown algae, actually, specifically called giant kelp. Now, giant kelp is a very impressive organism. It can grow incredibly fast. In fact, in ideal conditions, giant kelp can grow about 1 to 2 feet a day. Now, to kind of give you a little bit of context, it took me about 22 years to get 5'4". So, giant kelp can beat my height in just a couple of days, which I think is really, really cool. Now, those ideal conditions that it requires is really cold water and really nutrient-dense water, both of which we have here in Southern California. Now, those 2 conditions only line up in about 7 different places in the world. So we're very lucky to have it here off our Southern California coast. Now, I do want to address the nutrient-rich waters. Usually when we look at our waters here off our coast, we say it looks dirty or it looks gross. Those are the wrong adjectives for it. If you see kind of a brown, murky color, that actually tells you that our local ecosystem is super healthy and it's doing really, really well. And if you see that murkiness, it's actually called turbidity. Turbidity is just the measure of nutrients in the water. So we have a really high turbidity here in Southern California, and that is exactly why this giant kelp species is able to grow. Now, this kelp forest is home to over 1,000 different species of animals, from the smallest types of invertebrates, which are animals without a backbone, to the largest species of marine mammals, like the blue whale sculpture that is right behind you. Yes, we do get whales here in Southern California, and it is an amazing sight. But let's go ahead and explore the largest animal in here, shall we? It is not a mammal. It's going to be one of our bony fish. It's going to be one just passed by me right here, but there's also one at the top right, our giant sea bass. I think their name is pretty well suits them. They are pretty large, and the ones you're looking at aren't even fully grown yet. So giant sea bass are known to get around 7 to 8 feet long, over 500 pounds. The ones you're looking at are about middle-aged for giant sea bass. So they live around 80 years. The ones you're looking at are in their 30s. So they have lots of growing to do still. And the glass you're looking at them through is very, very thick, and it's curved. So it's kind of distorting their size just slightly. So they're actually bigger than what you're seeing as well. Now they're large, they also don't move very fast, as you can see. That's about as fast as they move, and just a little bit faster when they're playing. They're also known as the apex predator in this environment. That means they have no natural predators themselves, they are the top of the food chain. Now, this characteristic about them makes them very curious because they're not afraid of anything. They don't have any predators. So, unfortunately, these three characteristics got them into a little bit of trouble many, many years ago due to overfishing practices. And unfortunately, they almost became extinct because when fishermen and divers were to go into these habitats, the giant sea bass would swim right on up to them and just check them out and just make themselves a target for that fishing, unfortunately. But luckily, lots of conservationists and researchers, divers noticed this and they wanted to preserve this species. So lots of conservation efforts were put into works and we're seeing an increase in their population numbers now. And in fact, the Aquarium of the Pacific was the first public institution to successfully hatch and raise a giant sea bass. And to this day, we're still involved with many of those conservation efforts. Now, our giant sea bass have a lot of different adaptations to help them out in their environment. An adaptation can be a physical characteristic or a behavior that's really going to help an animal out. So the one I love to talk about is going to be their mouth. And I know that does sound really funny, but an animal's mouth can actually tell you so much about what that animal's going to be eating and where they're going to be finding it. So let's go ahead and see if we can draw a conclusion together. Just by looking at our giant sea bass, their mouth is in front of their bodies. So where do you think we're going to find their food? Above them, in front of them, or below them? Probably in front of them, right? Yeah, exactly. So they are known as an ambush predator. As I said, they don't move much faster than this. So they're not going to be chasing their prey. They're instead going to wait for their prey to come to them by camouflaging in with all of their surroundings, waiting for a schooling fish to swim right in front of them, and then they'll open their massive mouth. And because it's so big, as soon as they open it, it creates a vacuum suction. So everything that's right in front of them gets sucked right on in, just like a straw. And that's what we call ambush hunting. Now, using the same logic, if you can see any of our rays, we have 3 rays up at the very top, their mouths are underneath their bodies. So where do you think we're going to find their food? Above them, in front of them, or below them? Below them, exactly. And so naturally, if anything's going to be below them, it's probably going to be on the ocean floor, right? So they're going to be eating a lot of what we call benthic invertebrates, animals without a backbone that you can find on the ocean floor. Sometimes it's a lot of hard-shelled animals as well. And rays, instead of teeth, they have more plates. So they'll take those hard-shelled animals and they'll grind their plates together, and that's how they get to the nice meat on the inside. Now our rays have a lot of other characteristics that help them out. Not in comparison, very much like our leopard sharks. So you can see a couple of them along the bottom. Looks like they're napping. Or we have a couple at the top as well. Now they share a couple different camouflage opportunities. If you look at our rays, you may notice they have a really bright belly. They're showing off for you. The really bright white belly and a darker gray back. Now that is a type of camouflage called counter shading. And that will come into play when they're trying to evade predators but also hide from their prey. So say we're looking up at our shark array, that bright white underbelly is going to help them camouflage with the sunlight coming in from the surface of the water. Whereas if you're looking down at our shark array, that darker back is going to help them camouflage with the depth of the ocean, but also the ocean floor. Now, counter shading you can observe on multiple different animals, not only in this exhibit, but all around the aquarium, including our Magellanic penguins outside. Now, their bellies are going to be all white and their back is going to be all black. But when they're swimming, they're definitely like this, face down, right? So that is also considered counter shading. Now, another type of camouflage that our leopard sharks have is those stripes. So maybe you can see on our giant sea bass as well. We use that as an example. The spots on our giant sea bass are also considered disruptive camouflage. And that can come into play with any kind of pattern. It doesn't have to be stripes, it doesn't have to be spots. It can be speckled coloration like our harbor seals outside. It's really any kind of pattern that's really going to help disrupt the outline of their image when they're trying to blend in with their surroundings. Now, these spots on our giant sea bass are also incredibly unique to each individual. Very similar to the fingerprints on our hands and the tails on humpback whales. We can use those spots to identify specific giant sea bass out in our natural environment, which also helps us keep accurate population numbers to make sure that our conservation efforts are doing its work out there in this kelp forest. Now let's go ahead and jump to another predator that calls this habitat home. Does everyone see this fish sitting on the rock right here? It's kind of blending in, it's darker fish. That is our California sheephead. Now our California sheephead is incredibly important to this environment, so much so that we have given it a title. It is called a keystone species. What does it mean to be a keystone species? Well, imagine a stone archway, and the stone at the very top and the very middle is holding the entire archway together and in balance. That fish is that stone. Without this fish, the entire habitat has the potential to fall apart. And that is because of its very important role in regulating sea urchin populations. I know some of you have just joined us today, but make sure you get the chance to touch a sea urchin today. They are pretty difficult to eat if you really think about it. They have lots of spines all around their body, so if an animal is eating a sea urchin, they either need to have a specific method of eating or be really resourceful to get all around all of those spines. In the case of our California sheephead, they do have really strong teeth, so we're able to get some nice meat on the inside. But why is it so important that they eat sea urchins? Well, sea urchins love to eat kelp. See how we've come full circle again? Sea urchins love to eat the bottom of the kelp, specifically the holdfast, which roots it to the bottom of the ocean floor. Now, if there's too many sea urchins in a kelp forest, they can actually wipe out an entire area, creating what we call an urchin barren. That means you've seen nothing else except for sea urchins, which is great for the sea urchins, but not great for all of the other 1,000 animals that call the kelp forest home. So that's where the California sheephead come in. They help regulate those urchin populations, allowing for our kelp forest to flourish. Not only for all these animals, but also for us. Everyone take a deep breath in, and out. You all like breathing, right? No one's nodding. I'm a little concerned. I'm gonna pretend like all of you nodded. Now, algae in the ocean produces over 50% of the oxygen we breathe here on land. So not only is it helpful for all of these animals, but also all of us animals here on land as well. So we love algae, therefore we love California sheephead. Now these are just a couple of the animals you can find in here, just a fraction of this biodiversity. And biodiversity can be so important for a habitat because it makes it more adaptable to major changes like climate change, disease, pollution. If there are more animals working together, then if one falls behind, another can immediately pick up where they left off. So there's a couple things we can do here on land to try and preserve that biodiversity. One of them that we love to talk about are marine protected areas, or called MPAs. Marine protected areas are just like national parks you would visit here on land. They are just underwater. And I'm very happy to tell you that here in California, we have over 100 MPAs off of our coast, 9 of them being off of Catalina Island, right where the real blue cavern is located. So that means when you visit these places, they're entirely protected. You can't take anything, you can't fish there. It's purely for you to go and enjoy and connect with these animals, connect with your ocean neighbors in your community. Because that's what's so important, and that really is what's going to make everyone care a little bit more about our local oceans. But of course, you all are helping just by being here as well. We are a non-profit organization, so anything you purchase here today goes back to all of these animals for whatever they could possibly need, but also all of our conservation efforts happening behind the scenes and off-site. And we wouldn't be able to be a part of any of those without all of you visiting us on a daily basis. So thank you all so much for joining us here today. If you have any further questions, I'll be sticking around for a few more minutes. Once again, my name is Shayla. But other than that, enjoy the rest of your day here at the Aquarium in the Pacific.